The shoes we're wearing tells our story. Hi, my name is Bob Schwartz, and I'm the owner of Eneslow Orthotic Enterprises. That is the mantra of Eneslow since its inception from 1909 to help people. We currently have 2 retail stores, one in Manhattan, one in Little Neck, Queens. We do our education and training through our Eneslow Orthotic Institute, and you can find us on eneslow.com as well as social media. Thank you. Our worn shoes offer footwear solutions. Our lives are dependent on our feet and the shoes that protect us from this unforgiving flat surface we walk on each and every day from early childhood on. We call it a forensic review of our footwear and our foot problems because our shoes tell us about our physical selves and provide tools to improve quality of life each step of the way. So we look for footwear solutions. We want to make informed choices on the footwear style and size selection to improve comfort, to relieve pain, and importantly, to increase endurance. So at Eneslow, we say, treat your feet like you'll have them for a lifetime. Happy feet make people happy, and comfort is always in fashion. Thank you. Comfort and endurance, our shoes make all the difference. Footwear isn't like any other clothing. Yes, it's a part of our attire, but it's designed to have to support us and protect us from the unforgiving flat surface we walk on up to 10,000 steps a day, each and every day, up and down stairs and hills and valleys, over even and uneven terrain. From the beginning of the day when our feet are smaller, as you can see on the top here, to the end of the day when our feet are larger. And by as much as a full size or more if we run or if we're on our feet even more. And we do it all in the same footwear for long hours each and every day. Wow. Footwear should match each individual's functional and comfort needs. We have to think about the biomechanical and physical demands of the person and what their footwear has to do to support them. We have to think about their personal comfort and their endurance. And is the footwear for the purpose intended? Does it deal with the body weight distribution of this individual person and all of their connective tissue imbalances? So then we have to think about their self-management and their personal disciplines. Are they going to try to run through their injuries, or are they going to do rest and ice and compression and elevation during an acute phase? Are they going to wear footwear that does or doesn't help? Are they going to reduce or prevent or exacerbate or overuse problems that they're facing? And we like to call what we do about it worn shoe forensics. By learning about a person's life, we learn all about them through their shoes. Footwear happens to be a fashion accessory. And we're really happy about that because we think people really do look better when they're wearing shoes that represents who they are in a high quality way or whatever quality makes them happy. But because it is part of the fashion wardrobe, there's more to it than just putting on a pair of shoes to feel comfortable. So let's remember, we have to look at ourselves in the world we live in our community, in our fashion community, in our lifestyle community. And so our aesthetics are not just driven by what we see, but how other people see us, or how we think they see us, or how we want them to see us. So a function of self-expression, self-esteem, and self-image is our footwear. And so when we think about what we're going to do about it, we have to build a foundation under us that matches our lifestyle, our dress code, our attire, the seasons, the temperature, the humidity, as well as fit and comfort during the winter, during the spring, during the summer, and during the autumn. So when we think about our activities and all of their physical demands, and we think about the frequency and duration of all of these activities and their physical demands, That's going to help us make determinations about what to do. And don't forget about economics and personal values. So footwear, putting it all together and giving people what they really need, want, and desire takes a lot of work. People with problem feet want to wear pretty shoes. Now, in this particular case, we're looking at custom shoes because, as you can see by the left foot, it's significantly wider and it has a little bit of a toe problem relative to shoes. And you can see the right foot is straighter and narrower. So how are we going to make it work? And they want to show their toes, but they don't want anyone to see their deformities. So we've created an open sandal for them that frankly hides the problems, shows the toes and the toenails that are painted, and yet makes the foot look like it belongs going out to dinner or any activity in their lives in a high, comfortable way. So even with problem feet, we want to wear pretty shoes. Comfort and endurance. Our worn shoes tell our story. As we see here on the shoe to the left, the medial side of the shoe collapses as the foot is everting. Either the shoe is making it evert more or the everting foot is making the shoe collapse more. The one on the right is exactly the opposite. We see a lateral collapsing of the shoe. The feet are inverting. The shoes are making the feet invert more, or the inversion is making the shoe invert more. These are why the worn shoes tell our story. Optimum footwear for all lifestyles and conditions is what our focus is today. We want to make sure that we're providing footwear, we're thinking about footwear, and we're serving people's needs with footwear that serve their needs, their lifestyle needs, and the conditions of their feet and their footwear. Because our biomechanical goals in footwear is to help optimize balance, posture, and gait, to help improve comfort and endurance. So we look at the shoe style, size, and last selection to improve biomechanical function. Our feet and our footwear connect us to our planet, and how they feel when we live our lives in them makes all the difference. As we can see on this group of people walking, you can see the first person on the right is walking casually, lightweight, flat surfaces, probably uneven. The person next to her is now carrying some extra weights, starting to walk on hills, perhaps maybe needing more support, different kind of footwear. Then the next person is carrying even more weight, walking on even and uneven surfaces, needing maybe even more stability and support. And the last person is carrying even a heavier load. Now, this load may be bags on their back, or it may be extra weight they're carrying in their lives. It may be because they're walking up hills, or because their gait is making them walk up hills. So we have to create and provide footwear that satisfies each of those people's needs, lifestyles, and biomechanics. Why is wearing the right shoes so important? You know, feet and people come in unique and individual sizes and shapes. From sitting to standing, feet elongate, they flatten. Standing and walking, gait is different for each person. Stride length and width vary between left side and right side of each person. The angle of gait, how our body rotates over the ground. These are all key components to our successful durability, comfort, and endurance is really, I always like that word. Our body size and shape, size does matter relative to the ground reactive force that's not giving way. How flexible are we? What's our range of motion? Those all combine to make footwear critically important to health and well-being. That's why the right shoes are so important. Pedorthic forensics, our footwear and our life on earth. You know, there's this incredibly high magnitude of force, power, and energy that we expend in our lifetime. And we do it wearing our shoes. And our shoes have to support us in that endeavor, or they can hurt us in that endeavor. We hope that we want to make them help us live a fuller, happier, pain-free life. So our comfort and our endurance are affected by our overuse, by the repetitive stress and the wear and tear breakdown that takes place to us. Our shoes, their function in endurance, their overuse, their repetitive stress, they're subject to the same wear and tear and breakdown. And what wear patterns of shoes, that's why it's called pedorthic forensics, the wear patterns of shoes identify these forces: optimal, excessive, insufficient, from the ground below and the body above. And we can look for solutions. Our worn shoes provide data to determine optimum footwear choices for comfort and endurance. Fitting foot shapes. Now we look at this picture of 4 different foot shapes, and yet we see that they're about the same length, may even be the same width, but obviously they're clearly different. And their needs are different walking on the concrete planet in footwear. The shoe must match the foot. We see here the difference, this shaped foot versus a standard shoe. But the shoe must accommodate the fixed deformities. It must redistribute pressure. It must actually improve gait. So when we look at the foot and we look at the drawing of the shoe that surrounds it, we know that that shoe must be designed specifically for that person's foot. The shoe must match the foot. The important fitting of footwear has to look at and evaluate the relationship between the different parts of the foot. We have rear foot, where the heel is. We have the arch of the foot in the midfoot, and we have the metatarsals and toes in the forefoot. And they function differently, and they have different demands. So there's some key principles that we want to look at. And the first principle on the upper left-hand slide is that the different length of metatarsal heads. Let's look at the arrows A, B, and C. A and B represent where the metatarsal heads are of each of these right feet, looking up from the plantar surface, from the floor up. And we see that the first metatarsal head is proximal on the slide to the right than the one on the picture on the left. And therefore, the place where the foot's going to flex, the metatarsal phalangeal joints where the foot's going to flex, is going to flex further forward on the picture that we're looking on the left versus the one on the right. And so the fitting of the shoe, where it flexes, should match that, even if the shoe size would be the same. The last or arch fitting needs to be different. Another way to look at it is to see the arch inside the shoe as well as under the arch of the foot. As you can see, the arch ends behind or proximal to the metatarsal phalangeal joint and stabilizes the midfoot so that the first metatarsal and the rest of them are able to go through their flexion range of motion. So a shoe needs to also be designed with that feature as well. So heel to ball or arch fitting is very important in getting comfort and endurance. One way to best determine how a shoe functions on behalf of a person is to evaluate the shoes with the shoes on to see how the shoes fit. You can put your hand on the outside of the shoe, pressing down to feel their toes and metatarsals, to feel the angulations of the forefoot on the shoe. Are they matched up, or is the foot pushing out or pushing in against the shoe? Is it pressing against the upper of the shoe? Is there enough length for the toes? Does the metatarsal phalangeal joint match up with the flex point of the shoe, as we see in the slide here, to remind us that's one of the things we're looking for. We want to feel the shape of the shoe in relation to the shape of the foot, but also we're specifically looking for areas of high pressure. And of course, it provides the basis for determining which footwear and any orthotics become priorities, as well as measuring their feet, either they're using a Brannick device or some other device to measure their feet in relation to their footwear. It also helps focus on optimum products to provide solutions. We can feel exactly where their foot is pressing against the shoe. We can look at how the shoe is fitting in relation to their foot and think about what would be better, because we're already halfway home by exactly knowing from our experience of doing it repeated. We do it at home with our family. We do it for ourselves and all of our people who we take care of. And it is predictive of likely foot pathologies. So a worn shoe evaluation with shoes on, as well as a worn shoe evaluation with shoes off, can be very effective in our detective forensic approach to helping people. The last is first in shoe fitting, in pedorthics, in shoemaking. The last is first. The last is the model over which a shoe is made. You can see examples of it on these pictures. And you're looking for the last, this model, to match the foot shape as closely as possible in the position that it's going to be in when it's standing and walking. And so if you've got a fairly flat foot with a low arch, as you can see on the bottom left, you're going to need more of a straight last. So we think of those for the pronators and the flat feet. We want something with a little curve to it with the average foot types. We can take a little bit of arch height and a little more support. And then, of course, we almost want a fully curved last for the supinators, the forefoot runners, the high arch feet, sprinters. And then, of course, we always have to think sometimes we have to make a custom last because that person's feet do not fit in the standard range of sizes. And so we must make a last for them in order to make a shoe for them. Testing for proper shoe fit is a core competency of a pedorthist, but it should also be a core competency of each person in managing their own feet and their footwear, as well as on behalf of members of their family, friends, etc. And if you're in foot care and foot health and wellness, you should really be an expert at how shoes should and should not fit. We want to look at different points in the shoe to determine. And so let's just start right here. We're going to look at the top line of the shoe around the ankles to make sure that the ankle is cradled under their ankle bone by the shoe on both the medial and lateral sides. The medial side is higher, the lateral side is lower, so there's a different need. Take a look at how the whole rear foot of the shoe, the quarter pattern of the shoe, the padded collar of the shoe, whatever is back there, how it is cradling and supporting and accommodating the foot size and shape, and make sure there's enough room to expand and snug up the shoe, modify the shoe, because if we go out running in the shoe, our feet will get bigger while we're running. We run 10 minutes, our feet are already going to be half a size bigger than they run when we started running. So shoe fit here has to be critically used, the lacing system, etc. Don't forget about hosiery. That also plays a role in proper shoe fit. Testing for proper fit includes looking at the shoe from the distal end of the shoe, looking back anteriorly to posteriorly. You want to see that the lacing system is centered. Again, you're looking at the ankle joint to see how that is fitting. And you want to make sure that the laces are equal apart all the way through. So another way to look at the test for ankle fitting on your footwear. Another way to check is to check the heel and toe fit by having a person stand. Normally the foot kind of slides forward and making sure that the back still has a pencil, maybe 3/8 of an inch, a centimeter of room between the back of the foot and the back of the shoe, because the foot needs about that distance to go through its full range of motion from heel contact through foot flap and then during propulsion. So this is another way to effectively evaluate the length of the foot versus the length of the shoe. And you can here evaluate to see whether the foot is very flexible or very rigid while you're doing it. When we're checking fit, there are so many things to check for. So this is the list of things we want to check for when we're doing our fit checking. But I want to focus right now on toe and forefoot fitting. Because, and again, this is important when standing, because it replicates the extra weight that's born when we're standing that we don't have when we're sitting. So checking sitting does not really solve anything. Normally, you want about a 3/8 of an inch of toe room from the end of the longest toe, often the first, often the second, sometimes the third, from the end of the longest toe to the end of the shoe while standing. So you want to check for that very easily. You put your thumb right there, you feel for the toes. You also use your whole hand and wrap around the forefoot so that you can actually feel how the toes are wrapping around the shoe, checking for the fifth metatarsal, checking for the fifth toe, checking for the first metatarsal and the first toe, and then checking for the end of the longest toes. While you're looking, you want to check how the instep is fitting. Again, that's where your laces come in. The arch match up, how the throat of the shoe is matching up with the foot, and then, of course, heel fit and the top line where around the ankles are located. Now, one of the things that I think is fascinating that none of us are conscious of until we have a reason to understand it is that our feet change from sitting to standing. They change from morning to evening. They change when the weather is warmer. They change when it's colder. They change when you're having some medical conditions. So there's so many times our feet change. They don't stay static, and yet we put them into the same size shoe. So let's focus right now on what happens from sitting to standing. What you'll see is that the foot does elongate. It does flatten out. The arch does flatten down. Sometimes the foot elongates posteriorly and anteriorly. Sometimes it elongates laterally or medially. It splays, it spreads out. So our feet are changing. They are getting bigger from sitting to standing and even standing to walking. Very important when we evaluate shoe fit to make sure we have left room for what happens during the life of the shoe and that person. And socks, hosiery, thickness and style could play an important role in making fitting optimum. It's very important that while we have our shoes on, we check the toe box of the shoe for the proper height as well as the length and width and shape of that person's foot and that shoe, because they've got to match up. As you can see on the left here, the toes are sitting under the box toe or the toe box, and the toes have room for all 5 of them. Whereas once you get to a shallow toe box, even if the shoe is wide enough, the toes have no room to elongate. They have no room to curl. They have no room to function. Now they become immobile. Well, there are 18 muscles in the toes of each foot that is sitting dormant from day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year. And if we squeeze them even more, they become even weaker and less able to help us. And that's where deformities come in and trouble arises. So this is a really important reminder for us, as well as recognizing that the toe box plays roles in all kinds of feet. So here we've got overlapping toes. We need a toe box that's going to accommodate those overlapping toes. It may need to be a soft toe box. We need to have more spandex or elasticity to it, as well as other soft materials, but it certainly needs adequate height. Or here we look at just a cock-up toe, in which the metatarsals are dropped down, the toe is banging to the top of the toe box. Again, you have to go to a shoe that's going to accommodate that foot, and the selected style has to accommodate that, rather than, wouldn't it be nice to be able to wear the shoe on the right, not the shoe on the left? And then at the end of the day, when you look at all of this and you put the foot in the right shoe, you've got the right height for the toe box. You've got the right length. You've got the right width. You've got the right height. You've got the right shape. That means you have the right last. And you've built everything to accommodate that person in their needs to stand, walk, and live their lives pain-free with greater endurance.